It's a great honor to introduce you. I've come to know that you're an actually very extremely competent and effective governor, reelected by a huge margin in the last time you ran in 2018, and skillful in working with the Republican legislature that you've had to work with the whole time of your tenure, both in terms of minimizing harm, but listening to this list, restoring $1 billion in cuts to education, passing historic electoral reform, including vote by mail, medical marijuana legalization, pension reform, criminal justice reform, and very important for our US House of Representatives, leading the Democratic Party to victories in the state Supreme Court, which led to a new congressional mandate, and did all that with a united Republican control. And today's his wife's birthday, so we promised that we would only take 20 minutes of his time. And so I'm going to stop my screen share, and here's Governor Wolf.
So did I unmute myself okay, Jim?
You're ready to go. You look
all right.
great.
Well, thank you for that nice introduction. And by the way, in addition to the things you mentioned, I also expanded Medicaid. So we have the uninsured rate in Pennsylvania is now at the lowest it's ever been. So I take great pride in that. But I keep thinking about, to your point, what could I have done? What could Pennsylvania have done if we had had a majority? For 6 years, I've been battling a Republican majority in both the Senate and the House. And that's really important. And I am which is why I'm so heartened by what you guys are focused on in terms of the state legislative races. This is really unusual, but I think it's really important. There are three things I just want to point out. All right, so first of all, the issue, the issues are really important, and Jim was great going through a number of the things that I've done. I have been in politics now for less than 6 years. I was in business before that, but I was an unusual business person. I was very engaged. We had profit sharing. I think really paid my employees well, and was very successful as a result. But I went into politics because while I was running the business, I was also very engaged in the community that surrounded me, and this is York, Pennsylvania. And I was struck by the inequities that surrounded us, from the school system to economic opportunities. York had concentrated poverty, like many other cities in the United States, racially segregated the community, the schools. We had a good, what David Rusk calls a good inside game, but the outside game, the legislative environment in which cities all across Pennsylvania, I think this is true in most states in the United States that operate, is a very hostile one. And so I ran for governor because I wanted to really address those issues. So I have done a number of things that I think were really important, like expanded Medicaid, like restored $1 billion of cuts to public education. I've worked hard on early childhood education, including infant and toddler education. We're not where we need to be, but we're certainly better than we were 6 years ago. Legalized medical marijuana. Criminal justice reform is really important. Pennsylvania actually has, I think, now around 11,000 fewer prisoners in our state prisons than we did back in 2012, and I think 8,000 fewer prisoners than we did when I started. And 80% of the prisoners who have been released, of that reduction in prison population, 80% are non-white. So I think we're really making some progress. I think of these things, the defense of women's rights to make their own healthcare decisions, the focus on rights for the LGBTQ community. And I think I'm happy with what has happened in my administration, but I keep thinking what might have happened had I had a majority in at least one of the chambers in the state legislature. And so there are a lot of things that obviously are important, and that we really need to focus on national politics to get things done and changed. But there's a lot going on at the state levels. And so from a public policy point of view, that's really important. So congratulations, kudos to you for recognizing that. The second thing is that, and this is almost counterintuitive, but the ballot races actually can help with turnout, which means they can be a big help in the national election. If we want to get Joe Biden elected president, which I personally do, we need to make sure that we have good turnout. I think one of the things we didn't have in 2016 was turnout, and healthy down ballot races and competitive races really helps the turnout. And in Pennsylvania, that's going to be important this year. We don't have a U.S. Senate race, but we have U.S. House of Representatives races, obviously every 2 years. We have 3 statewide candidates, 2 incumbents, the state attorney general and the state treasurer, and a newcomer, Nina Ahmad, who's running for the state auditor general to succeed a Democrat, Eugene Pasquale, who is, as you pointed out here, running for the U.S. Congress, and I think has a really good shot to win that race. So it's really going to be important that the passion to vote takes place all the way up and down the ballot, and having candidates with the financial resources to get their messages out is actually going to help the races up the ballot. So having financial resources in our state Senate and our state House races is really, really important. And then the third thing is Pennsylvania, as Jim pointed out, we really have a chance to win. This is the last year, the last election that will be fought under the Republican gerrymander of 2012. After the 2010 census, the Republicans controlled the Senate, the House, the governorship, and the Supreme Court. And they basically created a map. Well, the U.S. congressional map. Pennsylvania has a majority Democratic registration edge, but there were, 13 Republicans representing us in the U.S. Congress and only 5 Democrats. And that was because of the gerrymander at the congressional level. I took care of that with a veto of the attempt to re-gerrymander and sent it over to the now Democratic Supreme Court. And they actually did a fair map, and that led to a pickup of 4 Democratic House members in the 2018 elections. I think we have a chance for at least another 1, maybe even 2 in the 2020 race, and Eugene is one of them. But we also have a chance to pick up at least one of the chambers in the state House. You have a really good list of candidates. But let me tell you what the odds are. In the House of Representatives right now, there are 30 Republicans who represent constituencies that I actually won in my 2018 reelection. 12 of them I won by more than 10%. And as Jim pointed out, we only need to pick up 9 in the state House to get a majority there. In the Senate, ironically, we only need to pick up 4, and that's actually going to be a little tougher. We have 4, including Julie Slomski, who's one of the ones that you're supporting here. I think we have a real shot to win her seat, and I think there are a bunch of others. And so we have a chance at 4. We have and a good chance to hold on to. There are 2 competitive seats that we need to hold on to that I think we will. The lieutenant governor's seat is lieutenant governor is a Democrat, and so he would be a tiebreaker in the Senate. But 4 is what we need in the Senate. So we have a chance. So those are the 3 things that really make this important, what you're doing. Public policies that really affect people's lives are affected by who is the majority in state legislatures, like the Pennsylvania state legislature. Second thing is that it really will help the up ballot races to have good turnout because of good financial resources in these state Senate and state House seats. And by the way, I've been raising money for the last 3 years for these candidates, or last 2 years for these candidates, and I am really pleased that you're willing to join with me in this and match up to dollar for dollar up to $120,000, which I have committed, which would mean that we would together be putting $240,000 into these races. So that's really important. And we really have a chance. So again, thank you for doing what you're doing. You are making a concrete difference. It's one thing to say, I really want to change our democracy. I really want to restore the soul of our country. But we have to do that. And we have to do it, obviously, with support for the presidential candidates and the up ballot candidates. But the hard thing is at the down ballot races, and especially if you're running for a state House seat in Pennsylvania, It's a hard thing to do, but somebody willing to give $5,000 or $10,000 to one of these candidates really makes a big difference, and it makes a big difference in our democracy. So thank you for doing what you're doing, and I am very proud to be a partner with you in this effort. So Jim, back to you.
Thank you so much, Governor Wolf. We really appreciate your coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
I gather you're available for a few questions.
Sure.
I'm not seeing that much in the chat, so I'll ask one I think is probably on a lot of people's mind.
Sure.
Which we know that vote by mail is going to be very important in Pennsylvania. Yeah. We also know many people are worried about the postal system. And I'm just wondering how you're seeing that play out in Pennsylvania.
Well, it is a concern. Let me give you some background. In end of last year, I signed a bill, Act 77, which was probably the most revolutionary electoral reform in the United States. It's certainly the first major reform of Pennsylvania's election law since for 80 years. And it allowed for Pennsylvania to vote. We have 50 days to vote now. I think that's the longest of any state in the United States. And we call it no excuse absentee ballot. So it's vote by mail. Now, the reason that's important is because we've been voting absentee ballot since the Civil War in Pennsylvania. And no one's really ever complained about that before. So we called it no excuse absentee ballot. It's the same thing. The only difference is you don't need an excuse to get the absentee ballot. So the first test of this new election law was June 2nd, the primary. And we actually had more people vote by mail than I think voted in the entire 2012 presidential primary, which is probably the closest apples to apples. That was a presidential primary where by the time we got to Pennsylvania, there were no contests in either the Republican or Democratic. So the turnout was not as high as it was, say, in 2008. But it was higher than 2012, so people were voting. But we also saw some tough spots. Pittsburgh, Allegheny County did a really good job. They got all their ballots in and counted, I think, by 2 a.m. or something like that. Philadelphia, a little less so. So we have spent a lot of effort with the areas that seem to need more technology, more people, and more financial resources. And the state is ponying up money, some of it from the federal government, some of it from the state, to help these counties, Republicans and Democrats. But the hope is that we will be able to have the remote sites in place and the equipment in place to actually make this a smooth thing. Now, the one thing that you pointed out, Jim, is that the Postal Service has been a question mark. So Pennsylvania on, I guess, Friday, along with a few other states, actually sued the instituted a lawsuit against the U.S. Postal Service. And we think we're on good, solid legal grounds. And it's not necessarily the equipment that they're messing around with in the Postal Service, but the statement that they're not going to let postal workers work overtime and actually make sure the mail does get through, which is what I always thought the Postal Service was about. So we're suing. I'm raising money to help make sure that underserved populations actually get the confidence we need them to have to vote by mail. It's obviously safe with this pandemic, but there is some nagging insecurities that are constantly fueled on social media and by our president and others in the administration that we have to counter. And that's one of the things that showed up in the primary. That 1.8 million, I think, new voters who voted by mail, or the 1.8 million people who voted by mail, not all of them were new voters, but voted by mail, 90% of them were white. So we really have a challenge to make sure that we're reaching and building, inspiring confidence in the underserved Black and Brown populations. And that's one of the things that I'm raising money for. And I think we are going to be able to between the lawsuit and between the effort to actually spend money on addressing the concerns of swaths of the population, I think we have the ability to actually do a good job in making this work. Again, the first day of voting for Pennsylvania is actually mid-September. I think it's September 15th. My wife and I, for the first time, voted by mail, and it was very seamless. I live in a Republican county in the middle of Pennsylvania, and it worked out really well. So I think it's going to work out. 70% of the people who registered to vote by mail were Democrats, which is, I think, why the administration is so against it. That it seems to be something that plays, for some reason, to Democrats rather than Republicans. But I think we'll make it work.
So Carol and Catherine and Kathy have asked about drop boxes for ballots. What are your thoughts on that specifically?
Yeah, I think I want to do everything we can to make voting easy. Again, I'm working with the Republican majority in both the House and the Senate. My hope is that they have some sensitivity to the needs of their constituents. And whether you're a Republican or Democrat or conservative or liberal, you should be want to do anything you can to make our democracy work better. Now, I say that, I'm not naive. I know that's not exactly true in every case, but I think it's true in a lot of cases. And so we're currently working across the aisle to try to figure out how we can have a safe drop box system, how we can give counties more time to actually count the vote and things like that. So there's still some work to do, but I'm hopeful that we can reach some agreement before the election.
Okay, do other people have questions in the chat? I'm not, Aaron, do you see anything in the chat, or is there anybody that wants to be recognized? I think if somebody wants to be recognized, ask one more question. We have time for that.
We have a lot of questions about the drop boxes. Is it legal for individuals to collect sealed ballots from neighbors? How to publicize efforts to voters? If we could talk about that.
Yeah, publicizing voters is what I'm raising money for, and I think we've gotten millions of dollars to actually do targeted marketing to actually address the concerns and questions of the voters. In terms of the law does have prohibitions on, I think they call it tax harvesting, or not, vote harvesting. So you can't sort of wholesale go in and throw out a whole bunch of ballots. You actually have to take the ballot in yourself, I believe. I'm not a lawyer here, but I think that's the idea. The things that the president is talking about is not something that should be a concern in Pennsylvania. The integrity of the vote is really important, and it is, I think, pretty well protected in the law. One of the things, rather than taking a ballot to on behalf of somebody else, is if you're concerned that your vote has been mailed too late and it may not get in and get counted, you can actually go to a polling station on election day and vote in person and do what's called a provisional ballot. And if in the end the ballot that you mailed in does get in before 8 o'clock on election night, they'll count that ballot and they will disqualify the provisional ballot. That is, I think we've taken every measure to try to make sure votes are counted. Everybody gets a chance to vote, and we're also protecting folks to make sure that the issue, or I think somewhat phony concern of fraud, we take care of that.
Okay, I think we're going to let you go. That's what I'm hearing, and
okay.
It's obvious you're a very thoughtful and competent and great leader. So we don't really have a way to applaud that easily, but we'll do our best. Thank you so very much.
Well, and thank you for what you all are doing. I really appreciate it. Jim, thank you. Thank you, group. Thanks very much. I'll see you.